So
Thank
I'm going
you.
to offer some words. Many of you know that I'm often asked to teach students who are training to be hospital chaplains. It's a little because I have this connection with lots of chaplaincy programs, and because I was a physician and a chaplain, I kind of have my feet in two sides of this hierarchy that the chaplains deal with inside of hospitals. So I'm asked to do a lot of speaking. I have about 10 or 12 different talks that I give. A couple of weeks ago, a supervisor, a teacher of chaplains, called me for the first time. I'd never met him. And he asked me to teach his students. And I was hoping he would ask me to teach one of the 10 or 12 lectures on my website that I've taught before. But instead, he asked me to teach his students about theodicy. And theodicy, in short, means why does bad things happen to good people? How could a loving, benevolent God let bad things happen to good people? And this is the most difficult thing whatsoever to talk about. I mean, there are lots of different explanations for this and lots of different spiritual traditions in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, but there's no really good explanation. There's just no way to really explain why bad things happen to good people. So it's the most difficult thing to speak about. This is what he wanted me to teach his students. So, like in the rabbinic world, theodicy is the most challenging thing to speak about because it comes up a lot with how can we believe in a God that allowed the Holocaust to take place? How can we believe in God that allowed the Holocaust to take place? And rabbis really struggle with how to explain that. And believe me, I could give a great Drash on that. But this Shabbat, I want to talk about something a little bit different, which is related to this whole issue of theodicy, as we'll see at the end. Um, you know, this week's Torah portion has lots of amazing moments. But one of the moments I want to visit tonight is this moment when Moses comes down off the mountain, looks around what's been going on while he's been on the mountain for 40 days. And what does he see? He sees that the people have made a golden calf. He sees the golden calf, and he has these two tablets that God has created for him and written, inscribed. And he gets so upset that he throws the tablets down and smashes them into pieces. And the interesting thing about this is that both the rabbis of the Talmud and the Torah wonder about what happened to these broken pieces. And both of these sources suggest that the broken pieces were collected and they were put in the ark, and the same ark that kept the whole tablets later on. So as the people traveled through the desert, there were broken tablets and there were whole tablets in the Ark of the Covenant. It's a lot different than what happens nowadays, When some gadget we have breaks, did you ever try and get it fixed? Impossible. I once called a service company. I had some gadget I wanted to get fixed. And I said, this is broken. Can I send it back to you so you can fix it? They said, we don't fix things. You just throw it out and buy another one. But in this case, they didn't throw out these broken pieces. They kept them. They put them in the ark. So I think we're going to need, what I'd like to really explore with you today is why the broken pieces were kept. And I think the broken pieces were kept as a reminder to value even the broken places in our lives, to value the things that don't go right, not just the things that go right in our life. Because these broken pieces in our lives, believe it or not, can conceal divine gifts. These things have happened to us in life for a reason. Beyond concealing divine gifts, they're the gifts that only we have been given. There are special and unique gifts. They may be painful ones that we wish we were never given, but they're lessons that we were given as we traveled through life. Important lessons if we learn how to mine them. I had such a moment in my life too. I remember the moment that I was given my first diagnosis of a major illness. Up until that time, I really felt invulnerable. After all, I was a doctor. I controlled illness. Illness didn't control me. And it became very, very frightening to realize that I was vulnerable just like everybody else. I was no different, even though I was a doctor. I had to accept my own invulnerability and realize that no one is invulnerable. We're all subject to life's illnesses. And guess what? We all inevitably die. And those truths, which had escaped me in the many years I practiced medicine, came down pretty hard when I was 56 and I got my first major illness. You know, when something bad happens to people, some people recognize the lesson in this right away. And some people, it takes time. They have to really process the thing to really understand what the lesson is. And there are some people that never get the lesson, no matter how long they think about why something's happened to them. They just can never find it. But our role in comforting others who are in this process of trying to understand why something has happened to them is not to give them advice, because it can even be cruel to tell people, well, there's a lesson in this. If you just think about it, you'll find what you need to find in this. Our role is just to be there to provide presence for people and let them work it out themselves. I like to think that these shattered moments in our lives, they're kind of part of this idea that the divine vessels were shattered and pieces of divine light were placed all over the world, and that our task is to find these pieces of the shattered vessels and bring their light back into the world. So in a beautiful metaphorical way, Moses is teaching us a very important message about the painful and broken moments in our lives. If we're wise and brave, we'll find ways to find the hidden wisdom in these difficult times. Just as the broken pieces were carried in the ark with the whole tablets, we need to carry the difficult times in our lives along with the joyful memories. They all have meaning and they all belong in part of our lives. And in fact, we only become whole when we accept the brokenness with the wholeness, the good and the bad. That was what I had to learn as later in my life when I became ill. So these broken places in our lives, they're kind of like the story about how diamonds are formed, you know? When coal is compressed, a diamond is formed. So these broken places in our lives are our formation, our way of becoming polished. So I started tonight by talking about the Odyssey. Why do bad things happen to good people? Perhaps one way to explain this can be gleaned from the saving of the broken pieces of the tablets inside the ark. The bad things in life are not punishments from God. They're not God being angry or God neglecting us. They're merely moments in our lives that we can mourn and regret. And if we choose to, we can try and draw meaning, wisdom, resilience, and strength even from these bad times. So my hope for all of us in this Shabbat is that we were blessed to have very limited moments of pain and brokenness, that most of our lives are filled with happiness. And if we do have a moment of brokenness or something difficult in our lives, you are in a community that will hold you, embrace you, and care for you in a loving presence and give you time to find the lesson, if there is one, to be found in this difficult time, to find the gift that's hidden in the broken pieces in your lives. May it be so. Shabbat Shalom.